All right, everybody. Well, we're joined today by NHL.com's Mike Morreale. Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, Marco. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, man. Well, I mean, the last time we spoke, we were previewing the 2022 NHL draft, and I remember one of the comments that stuck out was, Lane Hutson, a couple of inches taller. That's a top 10 pick, and we're hearing him more and more. I actually had Craig Button on about a month ago, who said, top 5 talent for me, top 5 talent, and now we're starting to see a little bit of that recognition. The Athletic Scott Wheeler has him 17th in terms of affiliated prospects outside of the NHL. Are you surprised at all from what we're seeing right now with Boston University?
Well, I mean, he got to BU, was able to showcase what he was able to do in training camp, what we've seen all along at the NTDP, and this season for the coaching staff over there, he's been nothing but lights out for BU in a top pairing role, top 3 role on defense for them. And despite that size, what he's able to bring offensively is just dynamic. And the thing about Lane Hutson too, Marco, is the fact that, I mean, everyone talks about the size, and will it affect him once he reaches the NHL level? Now, 2 things here. First, yes, he's a little bit smaller as far as stature goes, but he just has that IQ and the smarts about him of where to go on the ice at all times. And he's not a soft player either. I witnessed a lot of this at the World Juniors too, Marco, where he would go into corners, he would go behind the net. He makes the neat play of poking the puck ahead of opposing forecheckers coming in to kind of sneak his way out of the zone to create a transition. And the second part of that is like when you have a player that can skate as well as a Lane Hutson, it's very difficult to catch up with him. And I'm talking not just north-south, I'm talking east-west. I mean, this kid laterally along the blue line is exceptional. He played, they had him going on that second power play unit at World Juniors 2 for the United States. Now, Lane didn't probably, put home as many points as maybe some people wanted to see for the U.S. In the tournament. But he was a phenomenal player nonetheless, and what he was able to do and create offensively for the United States. And defensively, he certainly wasn't a deficiency. So I see a lot of great things, and everyone is right on the mark who you've spoken to in the past, Marco, about this player and what he might be able to provide at the NHL level, particularly for the Canadiens in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, that second round was something else in 2022 for Montreal. Getting Owen Beck and Lane Hutson 33 and 62nd is definitely something. But I do want to just maybe kind of bring up the World Junior Championships, because I did like that point. Like, he was used in, I believe, in rotation. Sean Barron's also got second power play time as well. But one thing I did like is when crunch time hit, they immediately bumped him up to playing with Luke Hughes on that top pair. And that's saying something, because if I'm not mistaken, he and Ryan Chesley were the youngest defensemen on that roster.
Yeah.
So I again, like, I understand not trying to get into the hype, but like, what does that say about a player like that to come in as an 18-year-old and kind of be so clutch that you're going to juxtapose him next to the, Luke Hughes is a great prospect, but he's an offensive dynamo from the back end. Let's call a spade, right?
That's right. That's right.
Putting a guy like Lane Hutson, who many saw just, a prototypical offensive defenseman in his own right, you see a lot of that shoring of his defensive game. And that's kind of where I wanted to bring it, is that you talk about his IQ, like the gap control, the stick positioning, boxing players out. That's something I feel like he's really kind of developed in the NCAA this year, that maybe wasn't as good last year, but has really kind of hit, peak point this year.
Those are the areas, the things that you need to develop in a defenseman, and there's no question about it. Montreal's player personnel department is probably keeping tabs with BU coaches, finding out what they're trying to do, how they're trying to familiarize Lane Hutson with the style of play where they want to see him get to. Look, let's face it, Lane Hutson's going to be at BU for at least another year, 2 years before he reaches the NHL. I think that's the right way to go about Lane Hutson and have him develop, have him getting to the gym to bulk up. But you're right there, Marco. It's, he was paired with Luke on several occasions. And it just goes to show you the confidence that the coaching staff had in him, in his defensive ability. He wasn't a liability out there. He was able to go out there. He was able to make plays in his own end against some, really tough competition. This was a great World Juniors, and not
Oh yeah.
necessarily, Marco, for the players that have already been drafted, like a Lane Hutson, like a Luke Hughes, but those players that are eligible for the draft, the upcoming draft as well. I mean, it was a real special tournament, and Lane was able to get it done. Like you said, Luke likes to make that run and gun push. He's also working on his game at the University of Michigan defensively, and he's really improved in those areas too.
Yep.
Looking at several other options and what he needs to do when he reaches the blue line. It's not just hit the blue line, enter the zone, and immediately think goal or creating a goal. He hits the blue line now, thinks of other options, whether it be a drop pass, whether it be a dump into the corner, because those kind of plays can be just as effective. Those are the plays that Lane Hutson is already making. With despite the size, despite what everyone says might be a liability of him entering the NHL, I see nothing but sky's the limit for Lane Hutson, particularly if he's able to stick with BU, learn the ropes, develop his game, build up that muscle that we all want to see him do. I think he's going to be a real special player, Marco, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think patience is the key here. And I think that's
Absolutely.
everybody sees kind of the point totals and they're like, okay, well, look, it's an historic, point per game ratio. What does he have left to do in the NCAA? A lot. And I think that's the key, right? Is like, it's promising, but if Cale Makar spends 2 seasons in the NCAA, then he at least has to spend, in my opinion, 2 seasons in the NCAA, because look
Right on.
look how good it's been for him. Look how good it's been for Luke Hughes as well. Like, this is second season as well. And it's definitely shown in his game how he's been able to pick it up little by little. Most of the most successful, even Adam Fox spent what, 3 years in the NCAA?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so at Harvard as well. And so proning patience in that case, especially with players that are on the lighter side like that. I'm always for it. There's no rush. Montreal is not dying for a left shot defenseman at this very moment. Maybe an offensive defenseman like Hutson right now, but that time will come. But I like the idea of him adding some weight to his frame, because although he is confirmed to have gotten to 5'10",
Yeah.
according to Boston University, that they had me chuckling as well when I asked them, but they're like, no, we measured. I'm like, I don't believe you. But no, they said he was 5'10", and I was like, how much does he weigh? And he's like, same. Like,
Same.
okay, all right. So he needs to. That's what needs to move up a little bit. So basically, when in the conversations that we've had, it's been mostly about Lane Hutson increasing that total. So as we kind of move into the future with the Montreal Canadiens, obviously the 2022 draft looks to be a pretty successful one. Now we're getting into the 2023 draft. Montreal is in the bottom 10 yet again this year. And there's a couple of guys, that we could definitely look at. I almost started singing the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme, because the first guy I was gonna bring up was Will Smith, a guy I had the pleasure of speaking to a few weeks ago, but a guy that's been around the program, went to the U18s last year, got some really good experience, and now this year is simply just taking over at center.
He is dynamic player. I believe right now he's second on the program with 78 points. He's got 32 goals, and he's committed to Boston College next year. Very coachable, very coachable kid, Marco. I believe he's number 3. Yeah, he's number 3 on Central Scouting's North American list right now. Goes about 6 foot, 178, right-handed right-handed center. So he really wants to find ways to keep taking steps in his game, and he really has since day one with the program. Has that combination of offensive instincts. He just always sees the game, and he sees space and knows how to create space for himself and others around him on the line he plays with, the players he plays with. It's just such a high level. And then you combine that with the stick skills, the elusiveness he has that's in his game. He's a really hard player to defend. And because of that, he's able to create a lot of space for not just himself, but teammates, which he's got a great skill set. He's able to find those guys around him. And I think that's what's giving him, the space to create, to score goals. I mean, to score 32 goals this season, obviously a career high at the program after last year with the 17s. He's got that decent size. I think this is a player that's definitely going to go in that top 10 range. There's no doubt about it, Marco. I like what I've seen in Will Smith, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few places that actually have him in the top 5. So as
Yep.
we kind of see that fluctuate, I think we have our top 3, 4 kind of set. I think Matvei Michkov recently has been closing the dialogue on him potentially not being a top 5 caliber prospect with his play with HC Sochi lately. But obviously there's the KHL situation, but
Yep.
there's another guy that is also getting top 5 consideration because of his out of this world play, and that's Zach Benson for the Winnipeg Ice. And I feel like, I watch a guy like that from the WHL, plays with that pace, that speed, that IQ, able to hurt you in any way, shape, or way possible. And I just keep getting flashes of Brayden Point playing at the same age, and just, I don't know, like I am always careful because there was Seth Jarvis who was kind of like that as well in 2020
Yes.
that I had, and he's obviously going to be a fantastic player. But
Mm-hmm.
I also saw that Brayden Point kind of look to it, but I just find Zach Benson just to be completely and utterly fascinating because he's outplaying 2 top 11 picks in last year's draft, and Connor Geekie and Matthew Savoy. What has been your take so far this year?
Yeah, Benson's been fantastic. Goes about 5'9", 160. He's number 7 on the North American list by Central Scouting. He's tied for 3rd in the dub this year, right? Marco scoring 74 points. He's got 28 goals. He's got 7 game winners, which tells you that the coaching staff wants him out there in critical situations. And he's tied for 2nd in the dub with 5 shorthanded goals. So he's able to get it done on special teams as well. And that's critical. That's critical. Coaching staffs, scouts look at that and they say, this is interesting. This is a player that is almost like a 5-tool type of guy where you can throw him out there in any situation and he's going to produce. He's going to scale your lineup. He can play in a top 6 role. He can play in a 3rd line and some sort of checking role, and he can get out there in PK and score shorthanded goals to boot. So NHL Central Scouting, although he's not big in stature, when I was talking to some of the scouts there, he brings all the attributes to be a complete player. He plays bigger than his size. Yeah. Excellent puck pursuit in all areas of the ice, whether he's forward or defense, whatever side he's playing the puck. So I like what I've seen in Zach Benson, and the fact that he's keeping pace, with those top guys in the dub, which is a real strong league this year, forward wise. Yeah. Is quite impressive, no doubt about it.
I think the WHL is, if we give or take, is it possible for them to have 10 first-round picks this year? Like it's
yeah, no, that's true. It's the dub is just absolutely loaded, and this is a draft, Marco. You probably see looking at the players, and I know how you dive into the prospects as well. This is a draft that's top heavy with forwards and particularly centermen. So the dub, you look at the list, you go right down it as far as North American ranks with Central. It's loaded. The dub is loaded. So the scouts over there have been very busy this year, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I've been having conversations with some folks that I see passing by the Bell Center. And they're like, "Yeah, I can't even get a hold of my friends out in the West because they're just at every game every day."
Yeah. No, it's been crazy. It's been crazy. Yep.
Well, I mean, there's a few players I want to get to in the dub maybe later, but at the top, obviously, we have Benson, we have Bedard. But there's one guy, Benson, we've kind of known for a while. Like he was a standout last WHL playoffs. But
Yep.
One guy who's really kind of come out and just kind of stuck his name in the conversation and is, I believe, either 2nd or 3rd before his injury was Andrew Cristal. And I find him to be an interesting riser because that's a guy that kind of came out of nowhere and just exploded offensively. And I one of the things that a lot of people have been saying is, well, skating, maybe size is an issue, but every single time, and especially the WHL, which is traditionally a more physical league, if you can make it there, you can kind of theoretically make it anywhere. Yeah. And I guess that's what I'm seeing from him.
Yeah, no doubt. Dynamic skater, is able to get it done. Kelowna this year is right in the mix there. He goes about 5'9"-ish, 5'10". He's about 170, 167 to 170. He's playing left wing over there in Kelowna right now. He's a left-handed shot, real fast, very smart on the ice, smart on his feet and what he's able to do. wasn't able. He was nicked up. Wasn't able to attend the CHL Top Prospects game, which was unfortunate. But
Yeah.
this is a player that certainly, from the range I see him here, he's ranked number 16 in Central Scouting's midterm ranks. I would imagine, and you're right on the mark there, Mark. I think he could go maybe a top 15, top 20 type of pick, depending on where these international players go as well. But Cristal is one of those guys that certainly is in the crosshairs of a lot of scouts, a lot of GMs, because he's one of those players that can do a lot of things really well on a line, making players better, able to generate offense when need be, and is able to, make those dirty plays in the corners and get into the corners and do the mucking and the grinding that is necessary for a particular line to have any success. So another player that you have to be patient with. We talked about patience and maybe another 2-3 years in major junior or whatever it may be for him before reaching the American League and then playing professional in the NHL. But I like Cristal and what he's been able to showcase, no doubt about it.
And then, now moving kind of away from the WHL and back to the program, there's two guys I want to talk about. The other one is the other Massachusetts, alum in Ryan Leonard. That to me, I find all eyes are on Will Smith, but Ryan Leonard, and we'll get to Oliver Moore in a second. But Ryan Leonard to me is a fascinating player because he doesn't necessarily have the power forward build, but man, does he make space for his teammates on the ice.
That's hit the nail on the head right there, Mark. This is a powerful player. When I watch Ryan Leonard on the ice, it's just power, but he has some of that finesse as well on what he's able to do. 64 points, 34 goals this year. And a lot of it is just mucking, grinding, looking for rebounds, getting between the circles, bottom of the circles, doing some dirty work. He's tied for the team lead with 9 power play goals. So coaching staff has him out there, on the man advantage. He's one of those competitors you combine in there with that skill set. He's a guy that just kind of makes things happen for your club, for your line. And I know a lot of times when I was watching some video of Leonard playing against college teams, players are, obviously players 5 years older, and USHL games as well. There are older players, majority are older. He can still go out there and be one of the more powerful players, just as you mentioned. On the ice, he plays a physical game, but it's also just that power and the skating and his ability to separate. And you combine that, with his skill set and his shot, which is very good. He's been able to create a lot of that stuff on that, off of that combination of attributes that are in his game. So right wing, plays with the program, goes about 5'11", 190. So his great size. He's number 4 in Central Scouting's midterm list. So yes. Ryan Leonard, I like him. This is another kid that could go top 10. Good. It's a good year for the NTDP, no doubt about it, Marco.
Oh yeah, I was actually talking to the NTDP the other day because I'm trying to get these guys little by little in interviews, because I believe all three. We're gonna get to Oliver Moore now. I believe all three are top 10 talent, and Oliver Moore is probably I knew Ryan Leonard and I knew Will Smith, but I didn't know much about Oliver Moore, the Minnesota native, and now he's kind of come up this year, and I find him absolutely electric. It's just the skating, the shooting ability, it's such a rare combination, a rare mix, and the ability to play center as a pure position. Just a very intriguing prospect for me.
Yep, I'm with you. I entering this season, Oliver Moore, knew about him. He was one of those guys in the program that I knew, okay, I just need to see a little bit more of him before I kind of make an assessment, watch him on tape. I know I was going to Michigan to watch a few of the games there. And my first viewing in November of Oliver Moore, I was like, are you kidding me? At that point, at that time, Mark, I'm actually saying to myself, this kid might be, neck and neck with Will Smith as far as who I want to draft out of the program. That's how highly I thought of Moore. And, talking to the people over there, they're saying the same thing. Like, watch out for Oliver Moore. And you mentioned Minnesota native. He's going to the University of Minnesota. He's 4th in the program with 50 points, 2nd on the team with 5 game winners. So again, another player that's out there in clutch situations for the team. His ability to attack with speed makes him a scoring threat whenever he's on the ice. He can dictate, he can make plays at that high speed to gain an advantage and generate chances. And he has a real good scoring touch to finish. So, he's a centerman that drives the game with his speed. That's his MO. Get him on the ice, get him out there on the PP. This is a player that can skate really well. And despite going fast and being fast, when you watch him out there, he's able to think the game ahead of how fast he's going. So it looks flawless. It looks seamless with his teammates out there. So really like Oliver Moore, Mark. You're right on the money there. I wanted to see him early in the season. Didn't know much about him, but I am a big fan of Oliver Moore. No doubt about it.
My initial draft rankings didn't have Oliver Moore and Ryan Leonard in the top 10. It did have Will Smith. And the ones we released last week, or 2 weeks ago rather, have Smith 6, Oliver Moore 7, and Ryan Leonard 10.
Yep.
So it just goes to show you, like, the progression has been interesting, and I really like the fact that he overwhelmed his opponents. Does Oliver Moore? It's just like, how defensemen will try to reverse and kind of backskate as a player comes into the opposition. Trying to defend a guy like Oliver Moore, you're basically just better off turning around and skating backwards.
Yeah.
So that you can try to catch him, because it's incredible how he can beat you on the outside, despite, like, he's not not necessarily the biggest guy, but size is not a problem with him because he combines good protection with that speed.
Yep. If you have that speed, you have the IQ, you can get it done on the ice. You can kind of learn those other things. And let me reiterate. So the skating, the IQ, and the work ethic, the drive to want to win every shift, to want to win every time you're out there against your opponent. That's what Oliver Moore has. He says he's still when I spoke to him a few times, he says he's still trying to learn, how to use his feet to maybe gain an advantage. When you watch Connor Bedard skate, Connor Bedard is not north-south. He's not McDavid speed. Connor Bedard is more east-west. He's catching defenders. He's going one way, and maybe the defender is going the other, and then he takes off. So it's more of an east-west type style of Connor Bedard. Oliver Moore is kind of that same way, but he also has that north-south speed that he's able to do when to use his feet. And he's just trying to learn the little nuances of how to take advantage of that. That's the one thing he says he's really working on this year. It's obviously working for him because he's been playing fantastically. Yep.
And then there's two last ones I want to get to, because I think we've done all the forwards almost at this point. Is one of them being Dalibor Dvorsky. Dalibor it's a little unfortunate because he is playing in Hockey Allsvenskan, so it's kind of difficult to measure. Like SHL, like, we could turn around and just kind of be like, okay, you can compare him to other prospects, this and that. How have you seen? Because I enjoyed his World Junior Championships, but what do you make of him in terms of a projection?
Yeah, and World Juniors, I thought he was great. He actually was disappointed in his play, but for the minutes that he earned there and the role that he was playing, I thought Dalibor really played well. He's a fast, quick forward, excellent offensive instincts, has great vision. Usually he's an offensive threat on every shift. Excellent, smart puck handler, can pass and can shoot really well. Has those soft, smooth hands, knows how to protect the puck in traffic. And he is defensively responsible. It's a part of his game that he said he's really working on this year. Even if, there is room for more physical strength, he's surprisingly effective in battles and in those battle areas. And I saw that at World Juniors. There were several games, I'm sitting, with Chris Peters, does an excellent job as well. Shane Malloy, we're sitting together, we're watching Dalibor, and he just knows where to go on the ice too, to make that play, to good decision-making and IQ for a player. He's left-handed, centerman, of course, 6'1", goes about 201. So he's got that great size. And he's number 4 on the international side for Central Scouting. So a creative, solid, and in my mind, a reliable prospect. Marco, I think this is a player that could go mid-range, maybe in that Montreal area as well. And we all know it seems like the Canadians like those Slovakian-born players. So maybe Dalibor Dvorsky, maybe Dalibor is in their crosshairs.
I interviewed Philip Meshar about a month ago, and he basically was campaigning so that the Canadians can select Dalibor. So they want to reunite that Ivan Halinka line, or the Halinka Gretzky, line that went roughshod last year. And I mean, why not? It worked so well. But one thing that intrigues me about Dalibor is that there's an innate shooting quality in his game that I find is completely underrated, because he's a younger player. he tends to be more of a pass first guy in tournaments that have like 18, 19, 20-year-olds. But you saw instances of him taking more of that shot. And that, Philip Meshar actually brought this up. He's like, he's more of a shooter. Like, what? He did nothing but pass. He's like, go watch. And I went back to watch some of the games in a Hockey Allsvenskan, and very strong shooter. Not something that came to my eyes at first, but maybe an underrated part of his game.
Yeah, I think the coaching staff wants to see him shoot the puck more because he has such a great shot. I spoke to Goran Stube, the NHL director of European scouting, and he told me the same thing, Marco. So obviously right on the mark there. He's a young player. He'll learn to do that. Sometimes it takes a little repetition. And as you said, he's going to the junior league. Then he comes, maybe comes up for maybe 1 or 2 games. So in Sweden. So it's just going to be, they have to be patient with him. He's got to just have that confidence. Once he gains that confidence to shoot the puck, then we might see a little bit of an explosion. But, let's face it, to have that in that feather in your cap that you could shoot the puck and score goals, whenever he does get that confidence going, it's something that's going to be, really, really well. That's going to work well for him because he's a playmaker now, but once he gets that shot going, it's going to be deadly.
I mean, I think he's a pretty complete centerman. And again, like you were talking, there's just so many available in this draft that picking in the top 15 once, let alone potentially twice, could be franchise changing at this point. And that's what a lot of Montreal Canadiens fans are excited about. One of the last ones I wanted to get to was Colby Barlow, because Colby Barlow looks like he's my age. Just like completely physically mature, full grown beard, and he plays like a man out there in a junior league. It just has great size, great shot, great awareness. The only thing that I've seen of late has been maybe, questions about his skating, but I don't necessarily think that's a problem for such a powerful guy. I think it's more of a stride fix than a lack of ability.
No, I think you're right. And you're right on the mark. I mean, this kid came in, Adam, my colleague, Adam Kimmelman at NHL.com, we do a podcast, NHL Draft Class, and Barlow came into the room where we were going to do the podcast with him. And I was like, is this Mr. Barlow? Is this Colby's father in the room with us? I mean, beard, the mustache, he sits down, oh my God, it was like, holy smokes. But yeah, you're right on. I mean, this is a kid that goes about 6 foot. He's 193, shoots left. He's number 10 in midterm ranks in Central, but powerful skater, real difficult to knock off the puck, can beat defenders wide with that speed, can dangle when he needs to, can break down players one-on-one in tight quarters, scored a goal in the CHL Top Prospects game when we were there, got the assist from Brayden Yager. Oh, by the way, another dub player.
Well, I was going to get to him last because he's polar, like he's very not himself, but bipolar in rankings, and I want to get to him later.
Yeah, but Barlow, really intelligent, knows where to go, and he has that strength. He just has that strength about him. When you look, this is like he's got that physique about him, right, Marco? He's an NHL player. You could just see it. He just kind of oozes it when he's out on the ice, and even during interviews and when he's talking to you and what he wants to improve upon and what he's really good at. So really highly versatile and a big asset on both special teams units as well, and what he's doing in Owen Sound. So could be a big year, a big playoff for Barlow too. It's going to be interesting to see how things go for Owen Sound this year. So, but yeah, I like Barlow, and this is another kid that's going to go first round, and whichever team does have the benefit to get him, let him sit maybe for a year, 2 years before bringing him back. And I think this is going to be maybe like a Mason McTavish type of player, no doubt.
I mean, yeah, and that's kind of the thing is that, a lot of people have been kind of, looking at what kind of player he could be, because Barlow has the shooting mechanics, but it really is kind of the skating and the creation of offense that's not generated simply by a shot. And a lot of those concerns have little by little been mitigated because he's become more of a complete player with Owen Sound as of late, playing with Montreal Canadiens prospect, in fact, Cedric Guindon. And the two have really good chemistry. And now Guindon is starting to benefit more in terms of a goal scoring spree from playing with Barlow. So I think we are kind of seeing his diversification becoming more of a dual threat player.
Yeah, no doubt. And the thing I like about Barlow too, he kind of oozes like leadership, right? He's a
Yeah.
team leader and he's a captain. Like I said, he plays that physical style, has a bit of an edge, and he's an elite goal scorer. And yeah, any player that's playing with Colby Barlow is going to benefit from that fact. And again, it's an elite goal scorer. He's not going to be intimidated by opponents or physical play. So he's right there and one of those players that you definitely want on your roster and in your development prospect pool for the future, no doubt.
And then, Brayden Yager is someone that last year, this time, everybody was like, that's a top 10 pick for sure. In fact, some people had him in the top 5. And he had a really strong Hlinka Gretzky tournament as well for Canada, but just hasn't been able to get those numbers to where you'd expect him to be with the Moose Jaw Warriors. I mean, Yager Furcus, Denton Mateychuk have been doing pretty well, but haven't seen that kind of separation from Brayden Yager up until now. And I think that's the thing is like, is this second half of the season maybe going to change things a little bit for him? Because I was left wanting more in my viewings of him so far this season.
Yeah, you're right in certain ways there, Marco. One of the things, and by the way, Brayden Yager does a draft diary for us on NHL.com. You check that out. It's awesome. Once a month he checks in and does a diary, which is great. But the thing about Yager too, and what he told me prior to the season, there was some pressure on him, obviously, coming in after earning 22 CHL Rookie of the Year. Expectations were pretty high on what we would expect this year from him, the big centerman. But he said entering this year, one of his goals was, yes, he's a goal scorer. He could put him in the net, and he is struggling scoring goals this year. But he also wanted to improve his playmaking ability. That was one thing that he told me that he wanted to do. And he has been doing that, despite the fact that he hasn't been maybe scoring as many goals, Marco. He is still generating some points and generating offense. And when I spoke to him actually last week about that fact that the goals haven't been coming maybe as often as he would want, he says he still feels as though he's generating offense. And obviously he's playing alongside some real nice players there over in Moose Jaw. But I don't, you'd like to see a little bit more. Look, playoffs are upcoming. It looks like Moose Jaw is going to be in for sure. Let's see how Brayden kind of can maybe take over some games here in the playoffs. He's experienced it. What he needs to do to generate, he's wearing a letter for Moose Jaw this year. So obviously in the room, he's got that leadership mentality, that ability. So that's something they'll also have to rely upon. So let's see when the playoffs, these games get a little tighter. There's a little bit more stake heading down the stretch here. Let's see how he picks it up. I'm not too concerned right now with the goal scoring, just because of the fact that Brayden did say prior to the season, before everything started, was I do want to become a playmaker as well as a goal scorer, because I think that would benefit me in the long run.
And I mean, and again, I think that's what I was saying. Like recently, we've kind of seen more, I would say, of an upward swing in his offensive production and also his play. So I'm really interested to see him down the stretch, because when I was doing interviews last year for 2022, I spoke to both Yager Furcus and Denton Mateychuk, and both of them couldn't stop ranting and raving about Yager. So it's like, it's high praise. And even the coaching staff is just like, watch out for this kid. Just very cerebral, very intelligent. So when it comes to the point where you're kind of trying to piece together a top 15, like we just mentioned forwards, and I think that's the last thing I want to get to is, you mentioned it's a very top heavy forward draft. There are 2, potentially 3 defensemen, and one that's actually picking up a lot of steam out in Russia, and Dmitry Simashev, that I feel like that's a conversation in and of itself. But when you look at, for example, Rasmus Sandin Pellikka, Axel Sandin Pellikka, Rasmus Sandin, here we go. And then, juxtapose maybe David Reinbacher. Like those are right now what we're seeing as to be the two front running defensemen in this class. There may be some movement up towards the top 10 as we get closer to the draft. I mean, last year, Kevin Korshinsky and Pavel Mintyukov vaulted themselves into the top 10 when most people didn't have them there. So we could still see it. But right now, are those the two top guys on the defensive end for you?
I think so, Mark. I think you're right on the mark there. I really liked what I saw in Axel Sandin Pelika at World Juniors. He's been one of the biggest risers in the
Yeah.
draft class so far, showing impressive puck moving ability, the mobility with and without it. Um, uh, he had 2, 3, and I think 5 points in 22 games at Skellefteå in the SHL. Had 14, 14, and 28 points in 22 games with the junior team over in the National. He's he's the type of player that has might be a little smaller in stature, but he's a guy that's been working on his game, much like when we were talking earlier about defenseman for Montreal there.
Lane Hutson.
Lane Hutson, the
I
same.
was gonna make the comparison, a right-handed shot Lane
Yeah,
Hutson, perhaps.
it's a similar type of situation there. Skellefteå defense coach Pierre Johnson had plenty of time to work with Sandin Pellick and said, he's shown a real big improvement since the start of the season. By the way, Johnson also served as an assistant coach for Sweden at the World Juniors, so I had a chance to talk to him, which was fantastic. And he said after every practice, they have Axel doing one-on-one drills in the corners. Offensively, everyone can see that he's smooth at the blue line, has that good stick ability and what he's able to produce. So he's the type of player that is developing every day. Offensive minded defenseman, but he wants to become a defensive player as well. And when I asked him about which players he looks to, it was kind of the obvious choices: the Quinn
Yeah.
Hughes, the Cale Makars, those type of players. But he's a competitive two-way guy. He plays bigger than he is. Again, another player that will hit you in the corner. He's not afraid to do some of the rough stuff. Very good attitude and work ethic. And the funny thing is, I recently wrote a story about Axel, and he began, as far as sports go, as a cross country skier, because that's what his father used to do, and it was actually his grandfather that bought him a little hockey kit one Christmas. I think he might have been like 7 or 8 years old at the time. So he got some skates and some pads and went out on the ice, and then he turned into a hockey player. I had to sit down with that and said, I'm no longer going to be a cross country skier. So
Oh boy.
I think he made the right decision, which was kind of cool. So
Yeah, we kind of had the same thing here with Vincent Rohrer having to choose between hockey and tennis.
oh
And
my God. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So, and famous father playing tennis, and you're just like, I'm gonna be a hockey player.
Yeah.
That takes cojones. So watching Sandin Pellikka, he wound up being the most used defenseman for Sweden at the World Junior
Yep.
Championships. That's saying something at draft eligible player. Like, I came in watching Sweden, trying to look at Leo Carlsson, maybe getting more of a peek at Adam Engstrom for the Montreal Canadiens, but came away really impressed with the way that he just transitioned the puck. And then when you look at the advanced numbers from that tournament after the fact, you realize that he's in the top percentile when it comes to moving the puck out of the zone, getting the puck in the offensive zone, and retaining possession in the offensive zone. Just a prototypical power play quarterback as well. If he can shore up his game, do you see a guy that's potentially, top 4 defenseman is generally safe, but is this a guy that could potentially give you more than simply just a top 4 role?
Yeah, I think so. With the proper development, and again, this is a guy that's going to have to marinate and mature in Sweden for a couple years. He's going to have to put on some weight, and he knows that. Axel told me that at World Juniors that these are the things that he knows are going to happen. But the coaching staff loves what they see in him. Not only in the at World Juniors, but in the SHL as well. He'll have to learn to earn his role on any team he plays for. But I think that's something that'll come to him naturally because he has the skill, he has the IQ. Obviously, a player of that size, you have to have the smarts and intelligence to know where
Yeah.
to go on the ice, where to go to the corners along the point. But this is, despite the 5'11", and here we are talking about a 5'11", about 175, 76 pound player. It's really not that small, but
It's not.
For a defenseman, sometimes you say, yeah, it's the way defensemen are today. You want them bigger, you want them stronger. So, but Axel is there, and he's going to be a quarterback. I would imagine a quarterback, NHL quarterback on a power play. He'll play that role. He'll fit that role. Such an exceptional skater to watch. He can fly with the puck on his stick. Doesn't have to think. Knows where to go. So yeah, Mark, I like Axel. I think right now for me, and he's number 3 on the international side
Yeah.
of Central Scouting's rankings. For me, right now, I think I do have Axel as my, the defenseman that probably would go first off the board if there was one to go.
Yeah, and a lot of people have him kind of hovering in that top 10 nowadays because you
Yep.
just, the progression has been so exceptional. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Moritz Seider like grab at him in the 5, 6, 7 range, just simply because of
Yep.
the lack of defensemen in that range. There's also David Reinbacher.
Yep.
There's also a defense. I will never get his name right, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but a defenseman in the WHL, Lucas Dragicevic.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I got it. Hey. So yeah, no, there's been intrigue in there. There's Gulyayev as well on the Russian side, Simashev that we've been talking about. So not necessarily the most deep in terms of defensemen, but from a forward perspective, and I don't necessarily like to compare draft years, juxtaposed to each other. But what I would say is it fair to say that the quality that you're getting within the first 20, say this year, is a notch above what we've seen in the last years, even 2?
I would say so. It's like we mentioned, there's a many impact players on the NTDP this year. We've seen a ton of prospects coming from the Western Hockey League, or that could go from the Western Hockey League. And then internationally as well. And you mentioned David Reinbacher too, is one of those right-handed D guys, 6'2", 185. He's number 10 on Central's list. That size, mobility, he projects to the next level. So yeah, I think you will see a notch above, particularly in this first round. I think there could be teams looking to get themselves into position to draft, maybe get another pick in the first round if they can. Despite the fact that you have a Connor Bedard and an Adam Fantilli, which looks to be 1-2 at this stage of the season.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other talented players here, Marco, that I think could benefit a team down the road and could have an impact in either a top 9 or a top 3 or 4 role defensively. So it's going to be interesting to see what teams are going to do at the trade deadline, if they're willing to part with picks in this particular draft. And 24 as well, I'm hearing, is going to be a real good one as well. So
Yeah.
So it's 2 drafts upcoming that are going to be real exciting, and some real good talented players. And I to answer your question, yes, I think this year's draft will top the one we saw in 2022 and 21 as far as first round talent goes.
And then, we talked about it a little bit, but I think I want to get it a little bit more precise, because there is this growing anxiety amongst Montreal Canadiens fans that moving away from being in striking distance of a lottery win from for Connor Bedard, it's kind of seen as like the sky falling. But the other thing that, that we keep talking about is, maybe that kind of fear is based off looking back in hindsight at other drafts and seeing the drop off in talent after, say, 4, 5, 6, 7 in a draft. This is the kind of year where you can rest easy knowing that the consolation prizes that await you, should you not win a lottery, are going to be far more valuable than before.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's wherever you're picking it, obviously, you want as high as you can get, but wherever you're picking it, even in the second round, there's going to be players to be had. There's going to be goaltenders that could be groomed, that can grow in your system and develop into some fine quality goaltenders. Al Jensen, the goalie guru there at Central, has told me that he's real excited about what's upcoming in this draft class as far as goalies are concerned. But look, Montreal is still looking to build for the future, right? They can't expect to flip the switch in one off season and become contenders. This is going to be, a process that's going to take some patience. And they did a lot of that last season with what they were able to acquire, not only and through trades and what Ken Hughes was able to do, but in the draft. And I think this is going to be a draft that's very similar in that regard, where if you're able to get some players, get them in your pipeline, look, maybe they'll have a significant impact on your club 3, 4 years down the road, Marco, but also you use those picks as equity too to bring in some players when you see your team is already starting to develop and maybe moving or shifting in a direction that you want to see it go. I think the New Jersey Devils, and we've spoken about this, is a prime example of that, right? You draft well, not only in the first round like the Devils did with Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes, two obvious choices, but getting picks later in the draft that have now come to fruition and have really paid off, and the Jesper Bratz of the world and those players, and then you kind of solidify that with through free agency and some trades that Fitzy has done. So I think Devils are a good example of that this year. I think Montreal's in that game, in that ballpark, on where they want to go, where they want to be, maybe 2, 3 years from now.
Yeah, and that's definitely something I've been saying. And Ken Hughes has spoken about wanting to add a third first round pick on top of their own, and Florida is just pointing to how much he likes this draft class. It's a class that he knows pretty well, having coached Will Smith directly and having been around Ryan Leonard for so long. That's why I like those two for the Montreal Canadiens, just because the familiarity aspect. But I guess the kind of the last thing, Montreal's biggest organizational weakness is goaltending. And I like the fact that you brought it up right at the end. Are you spoke about potential goaltenders being available in the second round. This is a far stronger draft for goaltending this year than we've seen in the last couple, right? Like I'm already like Mike Morreale in the USHL has been doing well. I believe there's also a couple in the dub that have been doing well. Magnuson, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Magnuson. Yes.
There you go. So there's a couple of guys that are starting to like come up, and obviously Trey Augustine was great for the US at the World Junior Championships. So there's a couple of guys in that like late first, early second, and tailing into the second round that could be of interest as well.
Yeah, Carson Bjornsson from Brandon in the dub, 6'3", 186. He's number one on Central's North American goalie list right now. Everyone likes what he's been able to showcase. You mentioned Rabel from Omaha in the United States Hockey League. Trey Augustine, I thought, had a real nice World Juniors. Is rated highly, number 3 on Central's ranks as far as North Americans go. Had a kind of a clunker there against Sweden. But the fact that, a 17-year-old goalie was the starting goalie in the World Juniors says a lot, particularly, when your GM is named John Van Beesbrook, and to have, that feather in your cap and what Trey was able to do. And there's no doubt that Trey will be in the running to be the starter again in the 24 World Juniors for the United States as well. How about Adam Gahan, right, from Chippewa in the North American Hockey League, was moved to Green Bay in the United States Hockey League. What a story for another Slovakia player. Holy smokes.
I know. They're coming. But it's incredible the amount of Czech and Slovak players that are going into the American pipeline system. Canadians have a prospect, Jakub Dobeš, that did exactly the same thing.
Yep. Absolutely. But yeah, just a quick one on Gahan and Mark, you saw it. I mean, what he was able to do to beat the United States, and he just took the Canadians to the limit. I mean, it was just the very end there. And he opened a lot of eyes. When I spoke to some scouts at World Juniors towards the latter stages of that tournament, they said that this kid is now on our radar because of what he was able to do. So Gahan just catapulted himself. Wasn't even part of the Slovakian team to start the tournament. And then he gets the late call, and he comes up and does what he does. So it was nice to see the goaltending really stand out at World Juniors this year. I thought, because usually this is a tournament where you're getting shelled, right? You're usually seeing the 5-4, 6-3, 7-5 games. But this year, the goaltending was really good for all the power countries, and in particular, Montreal and Melich and another undrafted kid that, who knows, maybe he goes 6th, 7th round this season. So a lot of good goalies that maybe made a name for themselves, and good for them, because maybe it catapulted them into a position where they can get drafted and work their way into a professional lineup at some point in their careers.
Yeah, well, I think it's what led to so many upsets in that tournament. It was just like day after day, upset after upset after upset. So I mean, that's what you want. Guys coming into that tournament, stepping up and really taking their game off. And a lot of players have actually used that tournament to step their game up. I mean, heck, I didn't think Connor Bedard can get any better in the dub, and he's at 3 points per game since coming back from the World Juniors. So we'll just let that generational talent go for a little bit. But look, I think I've taken up a lot of your time. We've basically done the full first half of the first round together. I look forward to being able to do this again, probably closer to the draft when we have kind of a better idea of what things are looking at. But it is going to be encouraging to Montreal Canadiens fans with potentially 2 shots in the top 15 there are most definitely going to be some quality forward prospects available.
It'll be great, Marco, down the stretch. I'm really looking forward to the second half. I'm heading out. I'm going to do a dub trip soon, and I'm going to, I cannot not do a dub trip and not go to Regina just to watch Connor Bedard one more time. People say, where Bedard is in the rankings. I don't care. Just to go see him is a treat. So yes, so on the dub trip, I am going to Regina for one more stop. And obviously, Central Scouting's final rankings coming up in April. I'm a fly on a wall for that. So I'm looking forward to that. And I know you love doing the prospects and watching these kids. So down the stretch, whenever you want me on again, that'll be great. I would look forward to that. No doubt about it.
Well, I thank you very much for taking the time today, man. And I wish you all the best. Looking forward to seeing what you guys pump out for us leading closer to the draft.
Thanks, Marco. Enjoy the hockey, buddy.